With the news that Retrogames are going to be remaking the Amiga 1200, or planning on doing so at some point in the future, it's easy to get a bit wrapped up in these sort of things whenever any of this new kit starts coming out and you start getting nostalgia. You start looking on eBay, start looking around, see what else is around. And I've been doing that this last week. I mean, I had the Amiga 500, then the 1200, then I expanded it, then I sold it years later. And many years later, I bought this. I took it apart, I cleaned it up. But then I started spending money on it. You've got to get the expansion board if you want to use WHD load. That's a double speed 68020 and a 4 meg expansion. And over the years, the RAM chip has sort of broken away from the board a little bit, so the trapdoor won't go on without it putting pressure on the RAM. So I leave it off. I took the floppy drive out and I put in a Gotek. I took the original hard drive out, which is that, and I replaced it with a CF to ID adapter so I could put one of these in. That's a compact flash card. I bought one of these PCM CIA compact flash card reader, so you can put your compact flash card in it. And you put that into the side of the Amiga, and you can transfer files from your computer quite easily, and it means you don't have to use anything like that. Yeah, they were really useful back in the day because it was annoying when you had double disc games or double disc whatever, but now you don't want that. That's a relic. As I've previously said, I've got the Commodore mouse, but in this day and age, they're just not really up to the job. So I bought this. That's the USB to 9-pin adapter, so you can use a modern mouse. Obviously, we want to play some games, so I bought two of these really cheaply, but they do the job. I need to plug it into a modern TV, well, a semi-modern TV, because some of the video outs on this don't work very well now. I think capacitors are getting old. The best option for me was this. That's a Amiga monitor lead or RGB lead to SCART adapter, and you get the phonos. Then the Amiga retrovirus. It starts biting a bit more and you end up buying things like this on eBay. Whole selection of Amiga magazines, all those, and there's, yeah, and that was the last ever Amiga format magazine, the last one they ever did. They said they closed for now, but I think that was just it. But you can buy them, you can still buy these on eBay. I've seen this listed, I think it was about 40 odd quid recently, this very one here. This one, I didn't pay that sort of money for it, but people are asking that for it. Some of these magazines even came with the original cover discs. How's that for nostalgia? If, like me, you were in on the Amiga close to the end, you might have had a CD drive, and there's a disc that came with that. You did actually get quite a lot on these. I think the magazine was probably about £6 by then, but it was worth it. There's no internet, well, I didn't have the internet on it, but again, it's quite nice having the actual cover disc, and look how that matches up. This is what people miss out on these days. And we have another one, and more, and here's the big one. They've only gone and give us directory opus the full version on this CD with the magazine. The full version, Directory Opus 5. That's the workbench replacement version. And I've got a legit copy of it. I've even bought some of these over the years. Amiga Forever. I bought this one because it came with the 2 DVDs of extra content. Videos that are probably on YouTube now. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. I don't know. Just detailing the death of the Amiga, really. But then you can keep it alive with this software as well, because as well as the videos, you've got the actual emulator. That's a little bit old. There's newer versions now where you can just get UAE and do it yourself and feel clever. Now this one may seem a little odd. Why am I showing you a really old £35 Apple Mac Mini? A £35 PowerPC processor Apple Mini Mac G4 PowerPC Motorola processor. And the reason I bought this is because I was getting a little bit obsessed with the Amiga once I bought the 1200 again and started looking into it. And that's when I found out about MorphOS. It's a alternative operating system you can install on a PowerPC computer like this. And basically it's 68,000 compatible. So you can run Amiga software on it. So I bought one of these on eBay. It turned up with a password on it. The guy didn't know the password. But fortunately I didn't want to use it as a Mac. I've never used this as a Mac. I wiped it. And I used the CD-ROM drive, which is built in to install MorphOS. It's like a lightweight operating system. Designed for PowerPC processors, I believe. And you can run Amiga software on it. I've got Directory Opus on this. Directory Opus. Personal use only. This is what I got with the magazine. And there it is. Directory Opus, the Amiga version running on a Mac. It looks, I guess, like any other operating system these days. I've really not played around with it that much. Does that look familiar? Applications, classes, devs. And we should be able to get something off of this. An Amiga disk going into a Mac. And there we go, we've got a disk. So let's just shift this out of the way. My little dock. See you, Amiga. So that's an actual Amiga disk. Daily tracker. You can run that. Although it comes up with an error, but we can run it to a degree. It gets updated every now and then, MorphOS. I do need to put a fresh image on this and see how it's changed. But yeah, this is how you can get a bit obsessed with wanting to get back into Amiga tech and just seeing what happened to the later Amiga software, like the PowerPC software. And then there's the kind of Amiga related, retro computer related, soothing pastime that I'm saving for my first proper mental breakdown. Or maybe midlife crisis. If I ever just sit there and need to I just need to colour. I've got this. retro colouring book, and in here there will be an Amiga, and I'm only going to need one colour crayon, and you know which one that's going to be 30 years on. It always seems a shame to actually draw all over this, which is why I haven't actually started it yet. Oh, look at that. You don't want to look at that one. Not that one. Definitely not that one. I'm sure in here somewhere there is our friend. That is the Amiga, the tank mouse, and all I need is some crayons. Just that one, and maybe the orange one for the light. But yeah, turns out there's lots of ways you can indulge your retro obsession, even using Crayola. Other crayons are available. And I also bought this for the janky Evercade ecosystem. Remember all those? That's what an Evercade cartridge looks like. And the problem with Evercade, by the way, this thing. Oh dear. Oh dear. Dear me. They don't fall apart, to be fair. They don't fall apart. I took this one apart because it just spontaneously stopped working one day. It's kind of a feature of Evercade cartridges, I believe. Unfortunately, it happened to me on my one Amiga cartridge. But luckily, I do have lots of ways to play these games, but just no longer on a portable. And that's what a Evercade cartridge looks like after it burnt out, or did whatever it did that made it die. But yeah, that's Evercade for you. So now we go back to the Amiga 1200 being remade. A bit like they remade this one. This got me interested again, and I started looking at Amiga stuff, as you do. And I discovered that Amiga Kit, a company who make various Amiga bits of hardware still, are actually reproducing an Amiga 1200 motherboard that you can put inside an old Amiga or a new Amiga, a new cased Amiga. So what this new motherboard will do, it will replace the one inside this, or you can actually buy replacement cases these days. They're about £100 or more. That's part of my point here. But you can buy a replacement board for this, or you're going to be able to. Inside this, you've got the IDE to CF mod reader. What they're doing is the board will have a compact flash slot there, replacing the PCMI CIA slot, so you can easily put your cards in that way. It's going to have some modern ports back here, including a couple 9-pin ports for joysticks. There's a daughter board you can buy for that, which lets you use the mouse, because I guess it's got USB ports as well, so you can use a modern mouse. But if you want to use the original mouse, you'd have to buy this other adapter. And right about there is a little board plugged into it, and I was wondering what it was. And a little bit of research, it's actually an Orange Pi 03, which is basically like a Raspberry Pi. It is essentially, that is going to be the computer. And it's like an Android TV box computer. So like a Raspberry Pi, a small box, it's bolted to this custom motherboard that Amiga Kit are creating, which is essentially one big daughter board for this Orange Pi 0. Because if you look up the spec of the A1200 NG, they're calling it, it's exactly the same spec processor as this Orange Pi 0, 4 gig of RAM, the same processor. So it's like, yes, they are recreating, or they're creating a motherboard that you can put in this. And if your main board's gone, or if you just want to upgrade it to a modern computer and stick it in here, you can. But it's essentially a very, very, very cheap microcomputer that they were putting in an Android TV box attached to a daughter board that fills the case and lets you attach peripherals and a modern monitor and a modern mouse and the actual Amiga keyboard, which you'll need because it has the ribbon connector for an Amiga keyboard. But the thing is, it's £200. £200. It's a small Android TV type, Raspberry Pi type thing, Orange Pi 03, attached to this custom board they're having made that just redirects some of the, like the CF reader to here, modern ports on the back. And it lets you run, I guess, the really later version of Amiga software. But it's not really an Amiga anymore once you've done that. It's basically an Android TV box inside an Amiga. I mean, they are going to let you plug in an actual floppy, Amiga floppy drive, because it's got the header for that. So if you wanted to do that, or the GoTech, you could do that. It's got Wi-Fi because this Android TV board has that. You can literally see it is the exact same board. I mean, on AliExpress, they're next to nothing. Those boards are like 25 quid. Although it does say that's a new buyer offer, and they're normally about 50. But even so, it's a big jump to £200. I suppose the advantage of making this board is you can buy the board. You could buy a recreated case, but then you still need a keyboard. So you'd have to buy an Amiga keyboard, get hold of one. And you can actually get cases that come with replacement caps, keycaps. So it would all look brand new then. You'd have brand new keycaps, a brand new case, and a new motherboard. So you would essentially be recreating your own Amiga 1200. But it's not cheap. A replacement new case is about £100. If you want one that comes with keycaps, you're talking about £170. It's like £1 a key. So you're talking about £170, and £200 for the A1200 NG board. And then you've actually got to get an Amiga 1200 keyboard. If you don't have one, you can pick one up on eBay for about 85 quid. So you're rapidly getting up to over £400. Which does make me wonder, what will the Retrogames one cost? And is it even worth getting? If you don't know, the Pistorm is an expansion board that people like Amiga Kit make, that you connect a Raspberry Pi into, and it basically becomes an accelerator board for your computer, a fairly low cost one. The Pistorm's about £70, and then you need to get hold of one of these, which I just did because I'm thinking about doing this. But this is how easy it is. You can get wrapped up in retro tech. This is supposedly a open but never used Raspberry Pi 3B. Or is it A? It's a Raspberry Pi 3. And if I download some software, stick it on that SD card, and then buy the Pistorm, take it out of this crappy case that came with it, I can plug it into the expansion board on the bottom of this, will completely replace that card, and the performance will be off the charts for an Amiga. So you're talking around, well, for me it'll be around 90 quid. That would cost me to get a very high spec accelerator board in this. But this makes me think, what is the point in going to the effort of buying this A1200 NG and either building a whole new 1200 or changing the guts out of an existing one? £200 for the board, when you can do a Pistorm, which will give you pretty much the same thing once you've got it all configured, for half the price. And why would you build one of these from scratch in a replacement case, the new motherboard, and get hold of a keyboard, spend over £400, and you end up with basically sat inside it about there, this very, very cheap Android TV box spec board, in a computer that looks like the Amiga 1200. You could just get the board and connect it into your monitor. Do you really want to spend all that money just to have it look like a 1200? When really, it's just going to be something like that running it. Is there any point in spending all that money? Which makes me wonder about the Retrogames one. How much is it going to cost them to produce the case, the keycaps? I mean, their board will be nothing like the A1200 NG, no doubt. I believe the Commodore 64 was just a very small board, and it just had weights in the front of it to give it a bit of weight. Just strips of metal, and then probably a few connectors on the back. So I doubt it'll be as authentic a looking board as it could be if you bought this the 1200 NG. But I still think it's probably going to be fairly pricey when it comes out. Maybe a couple £100. If they build enough of them, I suppose they can get the cases cheaper. But it does make me wonder, is it worth spending all that money when you can just do this with emulation now? Or you can just do it on a board like that. Or you can just run one of these. You can run one of these, get a mini Amiga on it, and that'll do you for the most of things. If you want to use some of the later operating systems and play with it a bit more, you can build your own out of something like this. But is it worth spending the money on a fully recreated one, or building your own one with the A1200 NG? Because you're just going to end up with quite an expensive, quite a low powered computer that kind of looks like an Amiga. This is when the retrovirus starts becoming a bit of a problem. You start collecting stuff like this and using it as wall art ornaments. Sometimes you take it out and have a fiddle with it, but you can end up with quite a hoard. It's quite nice to look at, but it starts getting expensive after a while. But I guess that is just what happens when you get bitten by the retrovirus. I guess if you've got the money to do it, it's not really a problem. I think it becomes a problem when you start dropping £2,500 on an Amiga 4000, which I haven't actually gone that far yet. But it starts with this, and it ends up with all of this. And I'm sure there'll be more. But maybe that's not a bad thing.